Hello, lovely people, and welcome to another episode of Show Your Tune. So today we have something different from any other ones because it's kind of a secret. So let me very quickly go through the email. So, hello Nedos, blah blah blah. I've attached a mdat file of raw responses of my drivers and would like to take guidance suggestions. So basically, it's not a tune, it's just as I asked, raw measurements of all the drivers with nothing done. And what we're gonna try to do is like a mini virtual theoretical tune based on the raw responses of the drivers. So the owner of the system has a Pioneer head unit, analog signal to Helix DSP3, so the new DSP, and the the last one. I'd like to stay anonymous, and I do get it because the stuff that he mentions. So he has two ground zero reference pure amplifiers, ground zero reference three-way system, and Quattrodio 10-inch sub in sealed. So if we have a look at these amplifiers, they're retailing for 3 or 4 grand each. The tweeter alone, the reference tweeter, is £1,000. For the gold edition, £2,000. I cannot get the prices for the mid bass and mid range because I literally cannot find them. So I guess it's most like I don't know, made to order or something. And Quattrodio subs, those are expensive as well. So it's in my personal opinion, it's an uber expensive system, and staying anonymous, having the system is a very, very smart move. So let's have a look what we have. Now, I don't have much data because for the Quattrodio subs, there's literally no parameters, nothing, and I cannot find anything about the reference mid-range and the mid-bass. The only thing that I did found is the tweeter, reference series tweeter, and it looks to be like a beast of a tweeter, 90 dB efficiency, FS of 630 hertz. That's like, it's like a home tweeter. Frequency response from 1 to 30K, recommended from 3K. And basically this is the only kind of guidance that I have. I have absolutely no pictures of the system. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to speculate a lot based only on the frequency response that I have. So let's have a look at the raw responses of the drivers. So I have left tweeter and right tweeter. And these are raw, but I don't know if they are raw or they're cut because they're playing all the way to, yeah, probably they're gonna be with no crossover or maybe a crossover like 600-700 hertz or something like that, because otherwise it would be, I don't know, but it looks to be raw. So these tweeters are extremely capable. From this, I can see the extension all the way up to 15K, then a slight drop. So they aimed, I would assume, quite on axis, not fully, but not off axis. And if I look at the mid-range, which are left mid-range and right mid-range. So what this indicates to me is, if we have a look at one, because both of them are kind of the same, the bottom end, peak in the bottom end, tells me that this mid-range is in a small sealed pod. And since we have extension all the way up to the cone breakup, this indicates that they're on axis. So I would assume that mid-range and tweeter is on A-pillars on those pods, so that like small aluminum pods that have for the mid-range and for the tweeter. If it would be like open pillars, there wouldn't be any of this peak and there will be more extension. However, this tells me that is small pods. Now, if you like mentally combine just these two things, that Small seal pods aimed on axis plus a uber expensive system. It tells me Asia, something in Asia. I don't know. It's just, again, just a speculation, but that's what tells me. So we have this. Now let's have a look. So left and right mid, they're very similar. Have similar cone breakup, everything. That's a dip here. However, the extension is slightly different on both sides. And I did see in a few different cars as well, which had pods. So it's kind of a common thing. Now, mid bass left and mid bass right. Okay, so I have to do this. Yeah, so what he did mention in the email as well, that there's some issues with the bottom end of the mid bass. And this is what you get when your bit rate is not the same in the whole system. So if your bit rate is like 48K in the DSP and different in REW. So when you're doing measurements, you have to make sure that in like here in preferences, sound card, you have your sample rate, like 48K, let's say. Then in the DSP, you need to have the same sample rate. And when you are making pink noise generating with this, you have to make sure as well that this one is exactly the same 48K. So make sure that all the bitrate is matching everywhere, and even the same in Windows. If you go to Windows settings in the speakers, the bitrate has to match. Otherwise, you're gonna have something like this. So this is a bitrate issue, yeah. So in order to fix this temporary just for now, because I want to see the measurement, I'm just gonna apply some smoothing, 112, and it's gonna be like this, because like 1/24 is a bit choppy still. So just to apply 112 and it's gonna be fine. It's just for now for our theoretical experiment. And from this we can see that we have good extension down to 40 Hertz, and the right one is the bad one. So again, this tells me that this is potentially a right-hand driven car. Yeah, so narrow it down. Asia, right-hand driven car. Where is it? I don't know. But again, it's just my theories. Yeah. So the right driver is a bit more problematic. The left one, so in the mid-bass region, because they're gonna supposed to be playing mid-bass. So the right one is problematic in the mid-bass region, and it has the extension like up to 370 or whatever. The left one, however, it falls down much earlier at about 200. So this is the limiting factor, because if you would want to play this mid bass higher, like up to 350, and if you would choose a target for the mid range at about like 300 hertz, then this can be a potential gap. So my thinking, like left, you see, my thinking is to cross them about 250. So in the same place where the mid bass kind of starts to drop off. However, at 250, the mid range is still playing good, and like it's still a peak. So when you're gonna cross it, it's gonna be much lower. So I think it's a 3-inch driver, because it's not gonna be bigger. So to play a 3-inch driver lower than 200, it's not really ideal. So I would say about 250. And what else? So mid bass, and let's have a look at the subwoofer. So what we have here is subwoofer left and subwoofer right, and sub both. So I would assume that he has two of these subwoofers. Now, left and right, there's slight gain differences, and the biggest difference in the higher frequency. So I would assume they are next to each other, probably behind the seats, because if you would have them like in the corners, one on the left corner of the boot, the other one on the right corner of the boot, then the gain difference, I would imagine, would be bigger than this. So I think they're just maybe one sealed box and two 10-inch drivers in there. So yeah, he has a lot of bass. And these drivers play low. The other thing that I noticed that kind of confirms my theory is if you have a look at the tweeter measurement, a tweeter, mid-range, whatever, don't look at the measurement itself, look at the floor noise. So at the floor noise, we have a peak at 24 and a peak at 47. This would tell me that these measurements were made with the engine off and probably engine on and probably the aircon on. So again, a hot country potentially. And these is only the things that I can say only for the measurements. So he has, when he sent this file to me, he had some targets added. So these was his targets, and it says something something Andy. So I would imagine it's something to do with Audio Frog tuning guide and his targets. So this is a target that has flat response from like 160 all the way up, and then it's kind of has a sharp slope down to 60 and again flat after that. And the crossovers, we have 70, 315 and 3.2K, something like that. So I would say it's not bad. However, when you have a tweeter like this and you pay 1,000 or 2,000 pounds depending on the version, and it has an FS of 630, I would want to play it a bit lower than 3K, than 3.2K. So I would say I did my targets as well. So by looking at this, I crossed it at 2K, just a bit lower. And as I mentioned, with the mid-range, to make sure that mid-range reaches the mid-bass, where it might be a gap, I crossed the mid-range a bit lower at 250, and I kept the same crossover frequency for the subwoofer at 70, because 70 seems to be like a normal number between subwoofer and 6.5 inch. Now, the biggest difference is you can see that tweeter will, with my suggested crossover frequencies, would have to play lower. However, when you have such an expensive equipment, and I would assume that you're not gonna play extremely loud, then with lower reproduction volumes, lower crossover frequencies would work better because you wouldn't be stressing the drivers. Like if you want to play like 110 dB, then obviously the crossover frequencies would have to be higher. However, if you're playing like normal levels, 85, 90 dB, you probably would benefit from lower crossover frequencies. So the tweeter would be playing much lower, like 1K lower, which is fine. The mid-range would be playing lower as well, from 317 down to 250. But I think it's still fine because if they're in small sealed pods, you're not risking over excursion. And when we have this left mid, this massive peak, we will have to EQ it down quite a lot, and it's gonna save the excursion as well, so it's not a problem. And for this, so let me put the overall. So overall, if you can see, my tune that I do always is like has a gradual slope rising all the way down to 30 and down. And I would assume this is Andy's. It has like a sharp peak at 60. So this peak, about 50, 60 hertz, for some, it sounds very warm and very nice. And if it sounds good, happy days. However, if it's too much of this area, it might sound boomy. So it's personal preference. But again, with if you look at the orange and blue lines, this is the mid bass. With Andy's targets, the mid bass would have to play like 5 dB louder at like 70, 60 hertz. And with my suggested targets, it would have to play a bit lower, so not too much stress on the mid bass. However, if it's not enough, you just use a global EQ and boost the bottom end. So I'm gonna go with the targets that I came up with, even if it's just theoretical, but with these targets, yeah? And let's have a look actually what can we do with this. So now we're going to do literally a tuning session, theoretical tuning session, and see what happens. So if I go to preferences, house curve, we have a tweeter curve loaded. Let's go to left tweeter raw, EQ. And now we can set the level a bit lower. Ooh, come on. Yeah, let's keep it like that. So tweeter, we have levels something like this. Could be a bit higher, could be a bit lower, doesn't really matter. It depends how much extension, but we're not going to have more extension than 15K. We could boost the top end, but we're not gonna. So for this, we're going to apply a crossover. I would assume it's going to be something like bezel because we need to cut only the bottom end. We don't need to touch anything here. So let's try bezel 4 at 2K and it's perfect. Bezel 2 at 2K, maybe a bit more, 2.2, no, 2.1. Yeah, we can leave it at 2.1. I think that's fine. Yeah, so like this. So bezel 4, 2.1. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna, where is it? Generate measurement from predicted. So that's this. This is gonna be at the bottom. Left tweeter, I'm gonna put XO, that's a crossover. Now I'm gonna choose this one and I'm gonna go to EQ again. And now I'm gonna EQ it. And we're gonna EQ it with, yeah, let's leave this slope because this slope looks very nice. And let's EQ from 1.8 up to here, which is 15K. And let's do 1. Let's see what it does, how many bands it needs. It needs 9 bands. So what we can do is we can increase it to 2 dB flatness target just to have a bit less. And we have 3 bands. There we go. So with 3 bands, we have cut, normal cues. With 3 bands, we have this response. We could potentially boost this one because why not? It's a very capable tweeter. Let's do it manually. So let's do it at 2.1. Let's boost by 3 dB. Q of 6. Let's do 5. Yeah. Q of 7. And a bit lower maybe. 2.050. Something like that. So like 5 dB boost. Oh my god, it's a lot. Not really, because the crossover cuts a lot. And like this, which one was it? This, is it this one? Yeah, like this one as well, you see? This cut affects this area as well. So it's not a problem at all with this boost. So again, let's do measurement from predicted. And this is gonna be left tweeter EQ. So left tweeter done. Let's have a look at the right tweeter. Let's apply something similar, bezel 4, 2K. Yeah, that looks very, very nice. So the target, we can choose a bit higher. Yeah, even higher than that. Yeah, that's perfect. Maybe a bit lower crossover, 1.8. Nope. 1.9. Yeah, something like that. I'm gonna save this, generate from predicted. So this is gonna be right XO. Again, EQ. Let's try to EQ now from this and see if RW boosts this area. So 1150 all the way up to 14K this time. Yeah, so they might be slightly off axis, these drivers. Yeah, perfect. So we have how many? We have 6 bands. That is fine. Yeah, all good numbers. 6 bands. Generate from predicted. And this, cool. So this is right EQ. Now, if I take only these two, let's actually just remove the targets. Right EQ, left EQ. Yeah. And now just level match. So if I level match, which one is it? 23, this one. Let's bring it down to match it. So we need to bring it down by 4.7 dB. And there we go. Left tweeter, right tweeter, done. And now we just gonna check. I'm not gonna do the same, but a bit faster. Just to double check if the mid-range and the mid-bass can be tuned to these targets. So let's choose this one, mid-range. Let's take left mid-range and EQ. So left mid-range, we have the target level. I think it's about right, because if we choose like this a bit too high, then we would have these dips to worry about. So I would say something like this. So we could, like the biggest dips and the biggest peaks, we could literally cut some and boost some. So crossovers, let's have a look at the crossovers. Let's try 250 and see which one works. So Bezel, Butterworth, let's try Linkus Riley. Linkus Riley 2, 220. Yeah, so like it might be too low, 12 dB slope at 200. However, again, it's a small sealed enclosure, so we can do Butterworth 4. And because what we need is 1 octave below. So if we cross it at 250, we need the response to follow only to 125, which is something like this. So even this would work, Butterworth 4. We can do Butterworth 3. Yeah, this would work as well. For the top end, because this is very, very flat, so I think we can choose Linkwitz Riley 4 to 2, something like this. That matches perfectly, no? So this can, and basically I'm not going to EQ because you can EQ it very easy, this response, so it's totally fine. The only thing, again, as I mentioned, like this crossover might be a bit too low. However, if you're not going to be listening very loud, I think it's going to be fine, just because of that mid bass. So this is, which one was it? Left mid. Let's have a look very quickly at the right mid. Right mid EQ. Let's do the same. Let's try Butterworth 3 at 200. So this one, this side, the right side, has a bigger peak and it goes a bit lower, so we can cross it higher with a different crossover. So let's do 250 with, can we do Lincoln Riley? Yeah, we could, but probably Lincoln Riley 2 would work better. 300, something like that, even 320. Yeah, something like that would work. It does affect this area as well, but it's fine because we need to cut this anyway. And again, for the top end, I think exactly the same would work, which is Linkwitz Riley 4 at 2K, and it works like magic. Where's the, yeah, that peak is here hidden because it's very high, it's at 10K. And like to EQ this, again, it's very easy. You literally just need to remove this peak, but this is going to be fine. So these work again for the left and for the right mid-range. the high pass crossover is different, because you see for this one we have 320, for the other one we had 200, just because left mid and right mid, you see how much more the right mid has extension. It has much more level heel, much more level compared to the left one. So my suggestion is, for the owner, if you would want to cross them like a bit lower and get rid of this peak, you need to open up that pod. If that pod is like molded into the A pillar, you can open up that pod in the A pillar and under the dash. If it's like the aluminium pods, you cannot really do anything about it, but it's clearly a sealed pod. And let's have a look very quickly at the mid base. So mid base, that's my target. Left mid base, EQ. Okay, there we go. And let's see what we can do with this one. So yeah, the target is something like this. Same level, 65, looks fine. Let's apply crossover, see which crossover works. So Butterworth, let's try Butterworth 4. It's gonna be a low crossover. Yeah, something like that, because it follows down to 40. Because look, if I add this, you see this is a massive hole, so you cannot expect the response to follow the target all the way down to here. It's gonna follow the target only up till here, because this is like a flat-ish response, so it's gonna follow down to 40 only. And exactly what's happening. So it follows down to 44, and it's perfect because the sub is going to be playing there. And Butterworth 4 at 60 hertz. Again, if you're not going to play very super loud, this crossover is going to be fine. If you will be playing louder, then we would need a steeper crossover. However, let me show you, if you're going to apply Linkwitz-Riley at 80, see, there's nothing left in there. So Butterworth, where was it? Butterworth 4, 60, yeah. And on the top end, again, for the low pass, it looks very flat. So we're gonna try again Linkwitz-Riley, 24 at 200. Ooh, no, 300, 320, yeah, 350. Let's try 350. So this is how I play with the crossovers. So yeah, 350 works. However, this would need to be taken down. So just one EQ band at 800. Let's go for -10 with a Q of what, 4? Yeah, something like even more than that. -15. Yeah, like that. So you just bring that, because it's not gonna show up in the measurement. Well, it's just, you know, if it's there, you have the EQ, just go for it. And here you will need like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 bands of EQ on this one to EQ down. So that's fine. This is left. Let's try right mid bass. So right one is a bit more problematic, because you see all these dips and peaks. If you choose a target curve like this, obviously you're not gonna fill these gaps. So for this, you have to, if you want a normal response, you have to choose a target curve which is much lower than you would want, something like this. You're losing quite a lot of headroom, maybe like 5-6 dB, but you really cannot do anything unless you're gonna relocate the driver from the door, because this is because of the door. You cannot do anything about it. This 79, I would assume, is gonna be the lengthwise cancellation, and this 150 is the sidewise. So because of the left right, and this is because front right rear, and you cannot do anything with these cancellations. You can try to boost this one a tiny bit, but it's not gonna. So yeah, this is a compromise. However, if you have 150 watts per channel, you can up the gains a little bit. So again, let's try this one at 60, same crossover. So this one needs a steeper crossover. Let's try different ones to bring that peak down. let's try link with, no, link with, so link with Riley, when you do link with Riley, it affects like much bigger area up to here, and we don't want that. So we want something like this, I would say. So Butterworth 6 at 60 Hertz works fine. And for this one, again, very similar flat. Let's try link with Riley 4. What was it, 300? Yeah, so maybe even 6. No, 4 is fine. Yeah, we can do maybe 290, 280. Yeah, so just to bring this, and we can boost this a tiny bit, 480. It's not gonna matter much, but still, you know. Let's do plus 3 dB with a Q of 4 again. 3, yeah, 470. Yeah, something like this. So it just evens out this area, and then to EQ it again, you're not gonna boost this, but just cut this peak, and cut this speed. So with this, you will lose a lot of headroom, but it is what it is with the door. You cannot do anything. And again, the extension is gonna be down to what, 45, but it's fine for the subwoofer. So these, and let's check the subwoofer. Browse, where is the subwoofer? And we're gonna do, because for the subwoofers, where is it? Sub left, sub right, and both subs kind of the same thing. It doesn't really matter much. So I would EQ them as a pair, not separate, because especially like at the bottom end is exactly the same. So I'm going to choose the number 14, which is the sub pair. Number 14. Let's go to EQ. Where's my target? It ran away. Target level 70. Yeah. So let's choose a target level a bit lower. I assume that this sub, no, it is without, because I would think that this is with a crossover, and because it's tens. I don't know if it's with a crossover or not. It says raw, but it doesn't look like raw, because it should play a higher if it's without the crossover. So let's just, for this exercise, assume that this is without any kind of crossovers. So again, let's apply a low pass filter just randomly, 60, and see what happens. So if we cross this at, where did we cross it? At 70. So we need extension up to 140, something like that. So somewhere like up to here. So we need to bring this up. So let's do 100. Yeah, perfect. So this is perfect because this brings back up even a bit more, 110. And people would say, oh my God, you're crossing a subwoofer at 110 Hertz. Yeah, but it's nothing wrong with it because there's no response there anyway. Yeah, so Butterworth 3 at 110 works magic. You have all of this area, which is, you don't have to EQ it at all, just maybe one EQ band to bring it here, and this one. In regards to extension, what I would say, like if it's a 10-inch, you wouldn't want to play it like down to 22, 25 or whatever. However, these are two 10-inch drivers, so they have more cone area than a 12. So it's not an issue. You can have a target a bit higher, but there's a little dip here as well, because I always try to have my target touching the actual response at 30 Hertz, because I want the extension down to 30. If you have a bit more, like down to what, 23, 24, that's fine, it's not an issue. But again, just this peak down, and this is just, you can do it literally manually. So PK, what do we have? 44 Hertz. We need to bring it down by 10 dB probably, with a Q of, let's try 4. Yeah, something like that. Maybe 5. No, 4 works better. Something like that. See, it's not a big deal. And this one again, choose 118 minus 8 with a Q of 6. Yeah, something like that. It's just, you know, playing around. But yeah, like 2 EQ bands and a crossover, and it follows like magic. Yeah, so for this system, I am suggesting, let's remove these subs. Where's the sub? This one. For this system, I'm suggesting crossovers of 70, 250, and 2K. Now, if you're gonna tune it to this and you decide to play a bit louder, if the volume is not enough, because like and again, I chose this target curve with less bass extension, like because now we have from 55 to 63. So it's like what, 9 dB of bass only. So it's not a lot of bass, just because for this one, which one was it? For this one as well, it was very similar amount of bass, just a bit more like upper bass, I want to say, but like the bottom bass is kind of the same, so I chose this one. If you choose this and you want to play louder, probably the bottleneck is going to be your mid bass drivers kind of starting bottoming out. If that's the case, you would need to choose a different crossovers at maybe like 85 hertz to cross the mid bass into the subwoofer, because subwoofer will play higher, it's not an issue. Just you need to cut the excursion at the mid bass level. And if you're gonna hear some harshness at the top end, then up the tweeter crossover to like 2.5K, maybe even to 3K if it's gonna complain a lot. But yeah, and if it's gonna sound not warm enough, on the global EQ, just grab like 50 or 60 hertz and just up it. So let me show you very quickly. Which one is it? Overall number 18. Let's choose 18 EQ. So that's my target. I'm gonna remove the target. And what you do, this is, imagine this is global EQ. So PK 50 hertz, and Q is going to be something like 4 probably, or even lower than that. So you can do Q of 2 and gain +5. And you're going to have that maybe a bit less, 4. Yeah, Q of 1 maybe. Yeah, there you go. So basically, where is it? This one. This is before and this is after. So this is going to look very similar to the Andes curve. So 50 hertz plus 4 dB with Q of 1 and on the global EQ, and it's going to bring it is going to be very similar. So this is going to bring you the warmness, the oomph in the bass if you want that. So yeah, this was, I thought it's going to be quicker, but it's not as quick. It's 40 minutes long. But this was a theoretical exercise that we have only from the raw drivers. And what I can say, all this tune, like if you would, where's the tweeter? Like these tweeters, yeah, with EQ and with crossover. From my experience, if you work only with raw responses, this is going to be 95-98% accurate. If you're going to enter those values that I put here with that crossover and you're going to measure it, the response is going to look extremely similar. So these like theoretical things that we do, they are relatable and they're transferable and they work. Yeah. And the only thing that's left is just level matching. So yeah, this is my advice. You can follow it, you cannot, it's up to you. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one.